Hey everybody, this is your boy John. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the world of The Walking Dead and how basically it got its origins and the world building behind it. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is your boy John again, and with me as always is Matt.
What's up?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
No, just kidding. Yeah, I know we gotta keep using the Captain Mustache, right? And Mr. Grumpy Beard. I know we gotta get that going. But anyways, I know you guys have known us as Matt and John. You know, we're two knuckleheads doing a podcast together. But yes, Captain Mustache here and good old Grumpy Beard next to me. Anyways, today we're gonna be talking about, like we already said, The Walking Dead. You know, I've watched it in the beginning. I honestly was like, wow, you know, if this could really happen, we're fucked as a society. I'm just going to say it, because unless you're a doomsday prepper and is ready to go at a minute, like at a moment's notice, like this could, I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, it reminds me of so much like, you know, like The Last of Us or what's the other one? I Am Legend, you know, like that weird scenario of like, you know, could it be fungal? Could it be, you know, treating cancer, like the cure for cancer, or in this case, I know we don't actually ever find out what the real cause was. I know like the spinoffs and all that stuff kind of mention it later on.
I mean, there's speculation, I think, at this rate, and I don't know if we'll ever really know. I mean, the ongoing thing that, you know, Robert Kirkman had initially pitched the books to Image Comics was that it was a sci-fi, you know, it had a sci-fi twist, which was aliens.
Right. So again, we're talking three different scenarios: alien, you know, cure for cancer, or fungal. Yeah. I mean, now here's the thing: like reality, if this really were to happen, I would say probably the more realistic one would probably be fungal. To be honest, I think that would probably be the most realistic, unless there's a cure for cancer that the government doesn't want to tell us about, and maybe that's the case. But again, I mean, The Walking Dead as a whole, though, I mean, this
to be honest, though, I mean, it would be some idiot creating some kind of a drug to get people high that makes people into zombies.
Oh, you mean spice?
Could you? I mean, honestly, that's really, you know, we are going to be our own demise if it comes down to it.
Well, no, but like
it ain't going to be some weird fungal thing like, you know, like anything. It's going to be us. Look, we are going to do it to ourselves.
I told you the closest thing that people have basically said that I would say is spice, because that is the closest thing that you could probably relate this to. You know, because
there's a lot, but you know. With the, you know, we're doing a 4-week series on Walking Dead, so we're gonna, you know, explore different, you know, like we're doing origins and world building of the Walking Dead. We're gonna be doing the characters, you know, we're gonna explore the expanding, you know, Walking Dead universe with the spinoffs, and we're gonna do the, you know, the series as a whole. So we're not gonna do, you know, every episode or issue or, you know, every single panel that's in the books. Like, we're not going to discuss everything that makes the franchise tick.
Look, we're not the Walking Dead podcast, okay? We're the Geeks From The Multiverse.
So we're going to make this very, you know, strategic and, you know, try to kind of make it each week focused on a particular thing and not, you know, episode 1 was about this, and episode, no, we're not doing that.
No, because that will take forever, man, and it could literally take a whole year. Like literally,
probably would take more than a year, especially if we were going through the comics. I mean, we would never get to 75 by the time October rolled around.
No, it would be bad, man. I think by that time we'd already be like 3 years in, and we're like, oh wow, we're finally done. Oh my god, yeah. Okay, great. But no, I was going to say this too, Matt. So, The Walking Dead originally. You know who actually got me? It's kind of weird. And you're going to sound, because I didn't really watch it in the beginning. You know who got it into me was Lee. When our good old buddy Lee.
I believe that.
Because she kind of like helped me kind of like, oh, you should watch it. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I started watching. I was like,
let me guess.
Okay.
Her favorite was Daryl.
Of course it's Daryl. No, but it was weird because, you know, when she said, oh, you should watch it, I was like, okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the first episode I watched at night, and I'm sitting there like, oh, God. Like, where are they coming from? You know, like, because I was just like jumping, and I'm like, I don't like this. You know, I'm trying to like avoid like windows and shit. You know, and I'm trying to not, you know, but it's. I guess it wasn't too bad, you know, up until a certain point. You know, it was just like, you know, in the beginning it was great. You know, like in the first few seasons, I'm like, oh, this is great. You know, and then like you start to get some weird stuff later on. I mean, we're going to talk about it.
We'll get there. But like the first thing that we want to do is we want to hear from you guys. So let us know in the comments, like, do you prefer the comic or do you prefer the TV show? That's the one thing that we want to know, as you know, in this episode is, do you like the comic or do you like the TV show? I mean, obviously each have their benefits and their, you know, their pros and cons.
It's just like everything else, right? I mean, because when people say, I'm only going to mention this because I know we haven't talked about it, / I know you're not really a big fan of it, but like Harry Potter, right? Like there's a difference between the books and there's a difference between the movies, right? They can only do so much, and it's like Lord of the Rings and so forth. It's like you can try to do your best to try to get everything on the screen, but at the same time, it's, you know, it's difficult. And so like whether you know, find it more accurate with the comics, you know, or whether you say, oh, you know, I really like the show and I like, you know, the people and the like the interactions and stuff, and there's more details on it. Again, it's all opinion, right? And so at the end of the day, you know, I never actually read the comics for The Walking Dead, so really I can't really say whether I like that versus not. But, you know, I'm probably going to say that the comics are probably going to be better in the sense of like depicting the like I would say the universe, not so much the show.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they're different. I mean, you do, you know, if you do like read, we actually have the first 3 volumes sitting right in front of us, which isn't the whole Walking Dead series, but you know, it's a portion of it. But I think if you read the actual books and you do watch the show and you can kind of put them together, it gives you kind of a greater appreciation for like what they actually did in the show, because like you can actually watch the show and be like, holy moly, like that was in, like I just saw this in the books. Like this very scene, you know, obviously not everything translates from the book to the show.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like, so, you know, you have to take, you know, pieces of it and, you know.
Well, I mean, look, I'm sorry, but if you think about it, The Walking Dead kind of created this craze of, you know, really the zombies for like, I would say the 2010s, right? It became like more popular. I'm not saying that zombies weren't a thing back in the day, of course, but like this became more of a very like highly rated TV show because like people were like, oh my God, like this is what I want to see. And so, you know, this was the platform for a lot of like the shows, like, for example, like The Last of Us, right, being the way it was. But granted, it was a video game. You know, the only difference is in this case is that, you know, probably without this show, you wouldn't have had like some of these other shows because not many people wanted to do video game, you know, TV adaptations at the time either. You know, so they had to be creative and they had to be, you know, working on all this stuff. So The Walking Dead in some ways became like wouldn't say like an icon, but it, you know, became like more of a platform for others to kind of like branch off a little bit. And plus, again, hence why there's also spinoffs of this exact TV show.
Yeah. So, you know, initially Robert Kirkman, who created The Walking Dead, it was published by Image Comics in 2003.
I had no idea.
And he created The Walking Dead with just one simple idea. And the idea was what happens after the credits roll in a zombie movie. And, you know, his goal was to tell a never-ending zombie story with the primary focus on the people and not on the zombies or the monsters.
Interesting.
And that's kind of where, you know, we have The Walking Dead right now. You know, even though, yes, are there zombies? Yes. But like the focus isn't so much on the zombies, and you can kind of almost see that in the show where, yes, there are zombies on the show, but the zombies are almost like a part of the environment where they're not like a part of, you know, the story.
It's like, it's almost like bushes, right? I mean, they're there, you know, and they're just kind of hanging out doing their thing. Because now, granted, as we all know, especially in this show, you know, if you piss one off, or at least a zombie, there's going to be a horde coming, you know, your way pretty soon.
Right, and even though you do have like those hordes that are coming through, you're seeing like how the people
Right.
are
Interact.
dealing with those, hordes or those zombies. So that was like the whole goal. And it was, in the show, like, yeah, we don't know the cause. We don't know what happened to the military. We don't know what happened to the government. And it was done on purpose. Like, his intent was to explore human survival over like the action-packed zombie gore, or even like he says it in these books right here. Like, his goal wasn't to make a horror book that was meant to scare people. And he says it, you can read it in there. Like, the intent is not to scare you. So if you're scared, he's like, I'm sorry, but the goal wasn't to scare you. It was to tell a story.
Well, and also, if you think about the Walking Dead too, most people, well, at least if you watch the show, the biggest threat is other people, especially once you start looking at it later on. But like, the main focus here is like, yes, you're dealing with hordes of zombies and so forth and whatnot. I'll tell you, the most terrifying thing is dealing with other like clans of people and dealing with how you're going to interact with.
Yeah, and I think Rick says this. I want to say season 4. He says this, and I want to like there's because I just wrote this in another episode's notes. I think it was season 4. Like, they're sitting around a campfire. It was one of like his. It's one of like his epic like quotes. And they're sitting like around a campfire, and he's actually saying like, "We are the Walking Dead."
Oh,
where he's
smart.
saying like, we, like, physically the living are the Walking Dead. And that's exactly kind of the Kirkman's vision for the thing was, it's not so much like the zombies that are walking around that is the Walking Dead. Like, the people are
the walking.
Their survival and what they're dealing with is kind of the goal of this. But what I find funny is like I kind of already mentioned it, was when they pitched initially to Image Comics that they were making a zombie book, they were kind of like turned off by just another, a horror comic. So he pitched this idea calling it a sci-fi twist, and that aliens had caused the virus to weaken the Earth for their eventual invasion. And then when he went to write, when he actually went to go publish the books, it was just the zombie apocalypse with no aliens.
Okay.
So he just did not include the alien portion in the actual books, even though he told Image that that's what the books were about.
Okay.
So they obviously came back later and were like, "Hey, where's the aliens?" But at that time though, the books were like a huge hit.
Well,
So
yeah. Now you don't want to change it. Yeah.
Obviously they're like, "Well, I have this stack of money, but where's the aliens?" I guess it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of funny how like you make one simple mistake and it's like clearly, I know we're never gonna. Well, maybe at some point we'll know, but like right now we don't know really.
Well,
I know there's theories behind it.
What's funny is like in issue 75.
Okay.
Kirkman did a kind of a back-to-back.
It's like an origin kind of thing.
Well, he did a back-to-back issue where there was a normal 75, and then he did another issue 75,
like a special one,
where Rick again woke up. Where he wasn't like in a regular hospital bed, but he was like in a hospital bed, like aboard a ship.
Oh, what?
And like Michonne was wearing like this like weird superhero outfit, and she had a lightsaber, and like everything was like super spacey, and like the governor had like almost like he was like a robot or something. Huh. It was like, and there were aliens in that. Like he made like this alien, comic, which almost suggested like that every time like Rick wakes up from a coma, there's another different apocalyptic situation.
Okay.
Which is really kind of a funny thing.
Well, I mean, it's funny because now you're like, well, really, what is the truth? Like, what is the actual truth versus is this all a reality or like this is all fake? And
like he's in a coma thinking like he's waking up and reuniting with his family, but then like, are the zombies real or is this situation real? Like, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he pitched the idea of the aliens being in The Walking Dead, and then when he went to publish a story, they weren't in there. So I don't know if they're real or not real. I guess that's up to debate.
That's a tough one, man. I mean, because like I said, it's like he was saying, like you just said in like his vision, it's a never-ending story. So like if once you tell the truth about what really went on and how it actually became, then that's the thing, right?
Right.
Like,
it no longer becomes about the people. Now you're just trying to find a cure to cure the zombies. It no longer becomes about the people.
Right. And so that's where I'd be like, well, now that's the thing. Now here's a question for you guys too. Do you want to know the truth or do you want to just leave it be? Like, because now I'll say this. I'm not going to lie because The Walking Dead is just, it's like, still, I'm not saying, I don't know how many, there's 2 spinoffs, right? And then there's another one that they just made about just Rick and something
there's more than 2. There's like 4 or 5 spinoffs.
Are you, what? I know there's the Fear of the Walking Dead.
Yeah, there was Fear, there was Daryl, there's the one
like
with
Rick with Michonne, right?
Yeah, but there was another one with
There's another one. Oh my god, I didn't know there was another one.
There were 2 other ones because they made one that was like it had
short film?
It had like 4 different stories in it.
Oh, okay.
But there was another one. But I think there's like 4 plus the.
Oh my god, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was a bunch of them.
I thought there was only like 2, maybe 3, but I didn't think there was like 5.
But yeah, so some of the themes in The Walking Dead, morality, survival, family, leadership. And like we said before, zombies are the backdrop. The real story is like the breakdown of society, morality and the struggle to, retain what was once humanity. Right? Like that's kind of like the struggle throughout the whole Walking Dead, the main show. We're really talking about the main show, not the spinoffs right now. Just the main show, like. Because you do see like these like issues of survival and like they're coming up against other groups. Like, you have like the cannibals at Terminus and, it's like all of these different groups, like, the wolves and the whisperers and all these like groups that are just like, the saviors with Negan and.
Oh yeah, that's what they, oh yeah. Yeah.
So you have like all these other groups that are just, they're trying to fight for what they want, but like they're fighting other living people.
Right, and that's what I was saying before. Like, their biggest threat is not so much the zombies; it's more the other people because now they're trying to survive and they're now trying to, basically gain territory. I mean, the first couple seasons of, The Walking Dead, especially with Rick and Darren and all them, all they're trying to do is just establish a home. And they're just trying to figure out where they need to be and stuff.
Well, I don't know if you remember like the very first season. I actually just started rewatching it, and I forgot because I haven't seen Walking Dead in a long time, but like. There was that group of like Latino guys that Rick first encounters because they take Glenn and they're trying to get the guns back and they actually take Glenn because they want to trade Glenn for the guns,
right?
And Rick's like, we're not giving you the guns, like whatever, and these Latino guys like are taking care of old people, like they're actually taking care of old people because all of the people that were in this nursing home left.
Right.
And they need the guns to protect the old people. But like, that's kind of like that breakdown of society where like they're going that much, they're going that hard against against Rick and their group just to protect these people.
Think about it. When basically it always also kind of reminds me of like Fallout, right? Because like basically money doesn't exist, nothing really exists. You have to barter. You have to basically find ways to be creative, right? So if you have it's all about supply and demand, right? So if you have something of more and you want to trade for it, you know what I mean? Like it's that same concept. So these guys, I mean, granted, hey, more power to them that you want to take care of old people. No offense. I mean, I'm gonna hate saying it, but to each their own because I'm gonna say it. You can only do so much, right? Because they're at their point of their lives. So you might as well just say, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. Have fun.
I mean,
I don't know. That's just me. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard situation. I'm not saying it's easy to be like, hey, you know what? We're just going to let old people die. But
I mean, I give them props because like they wanted to take care of them. But I mean, going hard and going like, I mean, they were almost full gangster, like, willing to almost throw Glenn like off of the roof just to get that bag of guns. And it's like, that's going way hard where like, you're almost like, is this really the direction society really needs to go into?
No, I mean,
you're taking care of old people. Like, we can compromise on this. No. We're going to throw this stupid ass off the roof. Like, no.
Well, and
the real question is like, when do people stop being people and just become another threat? And that's really the question of like the whole show throughout the start to finish, right? Like,
right. But because, like I said, at some points, it's like you have to merge, right? Because that's the thing. At some points they had to merge people and they had to like, live and do some other stuff and like help out. But like, you're right. It's hard to know. But that's the biggest thing, and that's also called life. But I was also going to say the trust, the trust, the loyal, all this other stuff, like the honesty and all this, like those three things are right there, especially in this show. Is like that's key because you need to know who you're going to trust, who's loyal to you, who's honest with you. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the people that you think are your friends are going to be the ones that end up killing you.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at the Whisperers, I mean, they're literally walking around in between hordes of zombies. And you're trying to relate to them being like, hey, we can come to a compromise here. Like, you don't have to bring this horde in and decimate our people just so you can prove a point.
Yeah. No, and
you're trying to relate to them in a way like, no, they're covered in zombie walking around with like, you're not relating to that person. I'm sorry.
No, you're not. And at that point, you might as well just leave them the hell alone or just start packing your shit and get the other way because there's only so much you can do at that point. Or if you're willing to do it, go get some explosives and just kill them all because that's the only way you could do it.
So, going into the art style of the books, you can kind of like look. I mean, most comic books, like you see them like their color, right? Like, even though like the covers are full color, the Walking Dead comics, the insides were not color; they were black and white.
Yeah, and because I'm just like taking a look at it real quick. I mean, don't get me wrong; like the front of it, I love. I mean, it's interesting because it shows, of course, some zombies, and then it's like it shows a picture of like kind of like what they're about to do, or like kind of like the main theme of the story. And even with, I would even say some of the older, like I'm thinking like 30s, 40s. Like, I'm not saying they wouldn't be colorful. There's definitely like ones like, I know like Batman for sure that would have like a black and white theme kind of a deal. But the fact that they chose a kind of like an older style, comic, where it's a black and white, it has all that, and they kept to that, and they didn't like really give color. That's good on them because I know, of course, when you look at comics, yes, they're colorful. They're, they want to pop. They want to be in your face. To go that route, especially modern day. I mean, that's unique in its own right.
Yeah, and it wasn't, it wasn't like, they were making some kind of a budgetary, decision. It was done on purpose to create like that stark, grim.
Yeah, I mean, you get that vibe,
aesthetic. Yeah, it was done on purpose. Tony Moore, who's one of the artists in, for the books, he did the first 6 issues. And I think like when you look at the first book, like just the raw like horror of survival, and you look at like what like the depiction of like the faces, and it's just like it's amazing. Like the picture of like Rick in the hospital bed, like you just see like the skinny, the skinny leg, sticking out of the bed, and like his face is all gaunt and stuff. It's amazing, like what he did. And then Charlie Adlar took over. The art shifted to a more grittier, faster paced style. But again, I mean, just that raw horror of survival, even like, yes, it's not a horror book, but you have to understand, like, it's a zombie story. Like there are zombies and there are things happening. Like people are dying in the book. Like, so, it is horror based, but like the survival and the grittiness of that black and white, like the artwork is just amazing.
Oh no, I mean, I just because I was kind of seeing what you were talking about in that first issue. I mean, I see, the. I mean, again, it's not like it's like drawing you and me right now, like in real time, like making it look like it's realistic, like let's say it's certain video games and stuff like that. But I mean, for what it is, and especially his drawings and the way he's doing it, absolutely, I think, you see that realism, you see the. Like, oh my God, there's Rick and he's in the bed and he's waking up and he sees a zombie. And then it's like, oh my God, you're getting into the story. It basically kind of like compels you to be like, I want to read more. I want to know what's going to happen. Yeah. And I agree. I think, looking at the style of this, it's unique in its own right. And that's why when you look at The Walking Dead as a whole, whether you look at the comics or, I would say even the show, I mean, The Walking Dead, even on the show, I mean, granted, yes, it's of course color, but when you're looking at the show, it doesn't give you the, oh my God, it's happy and rainbows. No, it gives you the dark kind of gloomy feel, even though like you wake up and, Rick, especially like in that one scene, the very beginning of the episode where he's on a horse and he's just riding through the town and he's like, where the hell is everybody? And then like, he doesn't know. And so like that right there kind of sets the mood to like, oh, well, shit, this is what the hell is going on. And so kind of like doing that too in the comics, it's like, okay, well, here we go. We're going to see how well this is going to be, even in the first episode, Yeah.
And even, even in the books, like those scenes, kind of dwell a little bit longer, with Rick and the horse. And, there are some things that are in the book that happen a lot quicker than they do in the show. And, with future episodes, in the future, series, we'll discuss more of that. But like, yeah, I think between the artwork, like the artwork's amazing. Some of the iconic panels that are in there, obviously like the scene, one of the panels, like the one that we just mentioned with Rick in the hospital bed is like one of the more iconic ones. Mm-hmm. And that one's like, you can go from that one right to the show, and it's like almost scene for a panel. Like,
yeah, it's pretty close even from what I could tell from that. I mean, granted, I know it's been a while for me to watch it, but I would say, for the most part, at least with The Walking Dead, I mean, yes, I would say there's probably, like you said, there's probably certain things that are like accurate. Like, doesn't have to be like The Last of Us kind of a deal, but like enough to kind of give you. I mean,
it's pretty damn close. I mean, like with Rick, like it shows him more closer to his face, and it does go out. But like, with the show, like it showed more of the flowers and him like crumbling, because it had to show something that time went by. Where we, in the book, it's more of him like you see him in the bed. You have to assume, you have to do something that most people have a hard time doing.
True.
You have to use your imagination.
No. Imagination. Right? See, no, there's a big difference between what you did and I did. But anyways.
But yeah, you have to use your imagination with some of this stuff in the comics, because you have to imagine how the scene's playing out. Where the show, like, you don't have to use much of your imagination because they're doing it for you.
And you're looking at it.
They're playing it out for you. But like Rick waking up in the hospital, like you see him in the bed, and the next few panels, he falls out of the bed. He's like, it happens exactly how it does in the show. Like he falls out of the bed. He's asking for the nurse. It happens exactly in the show how it happens in the book.
I'm glad it was a comic book and not so much a regular like novel book. And this is just me. Look, I love pictures, man. I love to see. This is just me, because the thing is I like to see what I'm reading, and that's why it's like I said, I like comics. But like, at least it was like this, and it kind of gives you that idea of like, okay, so this is The Walking Dead, and how is this going to play out? And like we've already said, but yes, so major events.
So yeah, the with Shane.
Oh, sorry.
Now I will say Shane's death in the book was a much shorter fuse as far as time. It happens much quicker. It actually, in this first volume, it's right at the end of the book. And I say a much shorter fuse because Shane loses his shit much sooner than he does in the show. Like in the show, it takes him 2 seasons to lose his shit.
That is true.
And he doesn't really lose his shit until like, it's like a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there.
It's like it's growing. It's not just like a
it's a slow fuse where it's it kind of speeds up here, and then in this part of the second season when Carl is shot by that stupid fat guy who shoots the deer.
Oh, yep.
And they first get to Herschel's farm.
Yeah, like that's right. Yep.
Shane is he kind of pushes the fat dude down and gets eaten by zombies. Whatever. He's fine right there. Like he's very supportive. He's almost like the Shane he should be the whole time.
Right.
And then he shifts again, and like it's almost like there's like a personality disorder kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like in the book, Shane never goes that route. Like Shane gets to a point where he goes from 0 and it's directly to 100, and he stays there. And he actually invites Rick to go hunting. And the whole point of him doing that is so that he can kill him. And in the book, it's Carl who shoots him in the neck. And like it's just like Tony Moore, like when we're talking the artwork, it's the the faces and the you see like Carl being this little young kid, and he's shooting the gun, and like you can see the kickback from the artwork, and you can see like the look on Shane's face and the little blood coming out, and it's such a like iconic scene, and the panels in the book where we know like in the show that's a slow build all the way up to almost the end of season 2.
Right. And then
it's actually Rick that stabs Shane.
Yeah, well, it's been
and then
a while,
after death he reanimates.
Yes.
And then Carl is the one who shoots him after he becomes a zombie.
Yes. Now didn't Carl have the was it the bow and arrow, right? Or was it something different?
That was Daryl. But
no, that was a crossbow. I know that, but I swore that, or did Daryl? No. What did Carl use then? Like what did he normally have for a weapon? I couldn't remember because I know, Daryl didn't want him to have anything at first, but I know I think when he got older, I thought he had like a certain thing that he had, like he would always carry. Like I don't know if it was a pistol or if it was like a, I don't know.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember like later on in the show, but
I know. But anyways, yes, major events. Since let's go into that.
Yeah, major events. I mean, obviously, like the very first Atlanta camp kind of sets the tone. Like when they because and this is where the show is different too, because like Rick doesn't they have that whole scene in the show where they're they handcuff Merle to the roof, and they're in that like little shopping mall place in the show. You know what I mean? Like Rick is in the tank, and you hear Glenn's voice in there going, "Hey, dumbass."
Yeah, no.
Which is an iconic scene in the show, but that's not in the book. What's in the book is Glenn saving Rick and them getting away, and then going from there right to the camp.
Oh, okay.
So like that whole scene, obviously, because Merle is also, guess what? Not in the book.
Not surprised, because again, you have to,
because he's a Dixon, so Dixons are not in the book. Both Daryl and Merle are not in the book because.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Merle. Yeah, his brother.
Both Dixons were created for the show, but
because Merle was I'm trying to remember his name. He was the guy who was in Guardians of the Galaxy. He was the shoot. The hell's his name? The one that's Star-Lord's like, kind of like adopted dad or whatever.
Yeah, my brain's mush.
I know. I'm sorry, yeah. but I forgot that's Merle, and I totally spaced the fact because it was so long ago, and I was like, oh, that's right, that was him. No, and then with again now, because we've already talked about Shane's death and whatnot. I mean, because Rick because it was weird because it was that power struggle between Rick and Shane. Because
right, and that was where obviously yes, like. No one is safe. Trust is fragile. The dead are the least of your worries. Like this is the theme of like kind of the early the early parts of The Walking Dead, even in the book and in the show, because Rick's leadership isn't quite there. Like he's first meeting this group, right? Like
that's true.
He really doesn't know anybody. In the book, Shane had just died. Like I said, this happens really shortly after. In the show, like I said, this is a slow burn. Like by the time Shane dies, like they're at Herschel's farm, and they don't get there until much after this.
Well, yeah, because I know it was technically Rick, his wife at the time, which I cannot for the life of me remember her name, but her and then Carl, because
Lori
was it? Oh, Lori.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. Yes, and then like they kind of move. They go to Herschel's farm, and then of course they meet Herschel and his daughter, and kind of a couple others. But yeah, no, and looking at how the TV show and the comics really describe all this, so like when it comes to like again the deaths, right? Looking at Shane. Actually, no, we've already talked about this. I don't know why I'm saying this.
Yeah, I mean,
but we've already, it's basically Shane dying because of Carl shooting him, and then in the comics, and then Rick, kills Shane.
Yeah, and that was issue number 6, by the way, if you were if you're following along, and then season 2, which I do think in the show, I do think Shane that whole storyline is dragged out quite a bit. Like I do think like they could have done maybe a little bit of a better job, like making it like a better build as far as like, because he doesn't really follow his comic book counterparts like trajectory.
It could have been like the end of season 1, he might have lost his shit, and like the beginning of season 2, he could have it could have been a little different, and then maybe that's when he was killed, and then they could have moved on, and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Like something like that, where transitioning into that and kind of like, oh, okay, now we have a death. Now we got to, work some shit out. That probably would have been the only thing I could have thought of, instead of like waiting until 2 seasons and then like, all right, fuck it, we're going to kill him. And then you move on.
Yeah, it was really like more of a much slower burn. And in the book, it's really like, it really gets to a pinnacle point where, Shane is he's really pissed, and he's really getting to a point where he feels that like Rick needs to be dead, because he think Rick should have died, because Rick now is like pretty much he's ruined his life altogether, and now he feels like he's nothing. And if he kills Rick, then now Shane can take the place that Rick is in now, and that's really where Shane is at. And it's the same place that Shane gets to in the show, but like it's a much slower burn. And Shane could have gotten there at the end of season 1, and he could have gotten there halfway through season 2. Right. But like it took him 2 seasons to finally get there. But like when you read this, if you go and read like volume 1, you can see towards the end of the book like just the faces that were drawn, just how pissed Shane is. Like he is really angry. Like
hold on, I'm gonna take a look at this because
he's really, really angry. Like yelling, like spit coming out of the mouth, like it's really bad. Like,
yeah, actually, I'm looking at it right now.
He's losing his shit. Like it's.
I mean, look at this one. Look at it right there.
look at that one.
Sorry, I know you guys are looking at it, but Matt and I are looking, and I mean, you can see the tears in his eyes. You can see it's like right here. It says, You come to rip my heart right out of my chest. He's like, yeah, Shane, Jesus, what are you talking about? Be careful with that. He said, go ahead and rip it out, Rick. I don't fucking need it anymore. Take it. And he's like literally doing that. And I'm like, okay, well, see that right there. That's just reading 3 panels right there. And it's just like, okay, holy shit. Like, all right, I got you, Shane. Relax. Now, I will tell you this, though. John Berthal, okay, because the guy who plays, Shane, and then also he does Punisher as well. He does a fantastic job. Like it's a great for the at least for the show,
Yeah.
And I'm like, now some of the other characters, right? Like because we've talked about like Daryl, Merle, like not being in the show, and like one of the things was
I found Andrea to be most annoying. I'm sorry,
you're good.
Andrea to me, like once her sister died, like it was like
she was Herschel's daughter, right, or one of them.
No, she was the blonde that was with the group in Atlanta.
Oh God, it's been so long. I didn't
but once her sister died, It was like all she did until she died was ugly cry, almost the entire time.
Oh, I'd have to look at her.
Anyways,
I know.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just some of the people that they chose were amazing, and some I'm like,
Dale was awesome in that show.
oh yeah, Dale was amazing.
Yeah.
Daryl
And Herschel, Herschel was great.
don't get me wrong. Hell, granted, I know it's later on, but like
T-Dog,
yeah,
T-Dog, man, yeah.
Even again when they, I know this is later on, but like when they brought in Negan, you saw the presence. That's what I'll say. I know we'll be talking about it later, but like, when you saw at least the antagonist of that season, you saw and you're like, oh shit, okay, this is getting real.
You loved to hate Negan, yes.
Oh, you do, but then we'll talk about it later.
I watching the first, rewatching the show, like I forgot how rough Daryl was in the beginning.
Daryl was probably awful.
Oh yeah, he was rough. He was awful. Like
he wasn't even as close to being as a badass as he did later on.
I think he was still the badass that we know him, but he was.
It took a bit because
he was a rough redneck. Woodsman,
right? But the problem was Merle didn't help. Merle made it harder for him.
Oh yeah,
and then unfortunately, once Merle was gone, then Daryl became who he was supposed to be, and especially now later on. But anyways.
So, 2010 AMC, they were obviously right. And at that point, they were known for Breaking Bad. They were known for Mad Men. I've never watched Mad Men, to be honest, but not really into that. I don't know.
I've watched a little bit. It's actually not bad. John Hamm's not bad. There's a couple others in there too, but like it's just different, right? It's more of a like 50, I would say like a 50s style like show. Like but again, it's about like advertising and stuff. Not the point here, but
in 2010, like they took a chance on some zombie show, and it's a genre based franchise kind of a show, high budget special effects driven. Mm-hmm. Show. It obviously seemed risky, but it ended up becoming one of their biggest hits. And then you introduce Frank Darabont. He was the guy behind Shawshank Redemption. He helmed the show during the very early seasons that brought that like very cinematic quality that we know to be The Walking Dead.
Yeah, and I know, like I said, I don't think he was on later on. Whoever did it later on, I got some questions for you about some of the seasons. But anyways, no, you're right. It brought in that sense of like what became this show.
It was different. Yeah, yes. It was different, and some of the things that we'll talk about in the future episode of the series, like how this cinematic quality that like Walking Dead became really paved the way for not just future like shows on AMC, but like the future of TV.
Yeah, you're right.
There are shows now that would not have that would not be in existence today if it were not for Walking Dead.
I figured. Look, you and I have talked about a lot of different like shows and like movies and stuff like that have basically
like The Last of Us would not exist
without. That's why I just said. Yeah, that's why I just said if this didn't become a thing,
Rings of Power would not exist.
Right.
I get it. Not everybody loves Ring of Power.
Yeah.
But like shows like that,
it's the storytelling.
Into the Badlands. You can just name them off.
I was going to say Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones was a perfect one. Like that would not exist.
Hold on. Well, those two shows were around the same time. So like that was kind of a little style. They're both different in their own rights, but it's the storytelling. It's the different ways to like get everyone involved.
But it's those like high budget genre based like shows like this one.
Oh yeah.
Like prior to 2010, like there were not shows like this on TV.
Oh no. I agree with you.
Yeah.
This was kind of the start of like how it is now for most shows that are, almost like a movie, but not quite a movie. Right. It's like you don't want too much, but now you have at least like so many episodes for it.
And like, now you're looking at Disney, Star Wars, Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing all these TV shows. They would not be able to do those TV shows if it were not for Walking Dead doing what they did. I said, now you're proving like, we did this risky thing and it paid off in a big way.
Right.
Yeah.
And no, I agree. I just know that, without certain things that they did, yeah, you're right. You wouldn't see. It's also like, I'm probably going to just mention this real quick. So like, when it comes to like, we already talked about it a little bit, but like the choices they made for like their actors, right? A lot of them probably never would have went on to do other things. Or at least, like because of, what I'm saying? Like, because that's mostly every successful TV show. But like, Norman Reedus, right? He's a big name now because of this show, right?
Yeah, nobody knew
who the hell he was. And especially he has his own game right now. It's Death Stranding. And there's a second one coming out. But like literally you see his face. He's like, oh my God, that's Norman Reedus. Right. You wouldn't have known who he was unless he was in the show, right? So
he even had his own show where he was riding motorcycles with random celebrities.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that's what he did.
Yeah, he did his own reality show. But like Daryl Dixon is like, one of those characters that wasn't in the comics. He was an original character, but he's one of the most popular and he has his own spinoff. Like he literally has his own spinoff
because of it.
T-Dog, T-Dog,
baby.
Played by Robert Singleton, also not in the comics.
Well, I'm trying to remember who was the Asian, or is that T-Dog? That's not T-Dog, is it?
That's Glenn.
Oh, Glenn. Was that Glenn? Oh, that's right. That is Glenn. Shit. I couldn't remember who Glenn was for a second. Yeah. Anyways, no.
So, I mean, obviously, like, when, we always say, stay with the blueprint, right? Like, that's what we always say.
Yes, that is.
Like, there are...
Hold on, we're going to get some merch going on with that. But anyways, go ahead.
There are some changes that were made, like in the book. And I don't know if most people know this, and maybe I'm just saying...
bullshit to say shit?
I'm saying, something that everybody already knows. But in the books, Carol doesn't go on to, like, be who Carol is in the show. Carol actually commits suicide by... having herself being bitten by a walker.
Oh, lovely. I didn't know that.
And it's not like, in book 50, it's actually very early on.
So basically, because I know she becomes a badass later on.
In the show.
Yes, in the show later on.
But in the book, no, she actually gets bitten by a walker on purpose. Oh. And Sophia never dies. Sophia actually becomes like a pretty prominent leader of the group.
Oh. So, and that's the thing, right? Because like we've already mentioned, you can have certain differences.
And Rick loses his hand in the book.
Of course he does. Does he?
In the show, he never does. Yeah, no.
I didn't know that. Okay. So, again, the minor differences here.
Carl never dies. Carl actually is one that, like, he actually is the one that's supposed to be taking over for Rick in the Walking Dead series once Rick dies.
Oh, when he okay.
But Carl in the show died in season 8, which we were kind of all like, "What the fuck just happened?
And why did it just happen?"
Like, he was supposed to be the one, but yeah,
not anymore.
Not anymore. We did talk about the Atlanta camp. In the show, it stretched it over 6 episodes, so it gave us time to connect with more of the characters. Let's talk about the pilot episode. Because the pilot episode for me, like, honestly, I do enjoy the first, I would say the first 3, because the first 3 is really where, like, you see Rick, and that's kind of like, it's practically a movie where, like, you're seeing Rick, you see what happened to him, you see him in the hospital, and then, like, really the first 3 is, like, that end of that third one is where he reunites with his family. So it's really like a whole movie.
I agree with you. That's what I was about to say is like, this is what I would say what Kirkman was talking about, right? It's like, this was his vision, I think, in the beginning of those 3 episodes, at least for the live adaptation of this, right? So like, this is what he was probably mentioning. It like, this is how you would want to get hooked in, right? Because this is how you
can follow. I mean, you can almost follow along with the book. Like, even though they did write "Don't open dead inside" on the door in the hospital, in the book, like, he actually opens that door.
Oh.
Because it's not written and it's not chained. So when he exits his room, he opens the door and, like, in the cafe, it's just full of zombies. And one kind of comes out and they tumble down the stairs, and he, it breaks his neck and whatever. And then he stumbles outside and then he comes up to that bicycle.
Oh, yep.
And next to the bicycle is that bicycle zombie.
Okay.
And you actually see that in the show. Like, it, it's the same reaction that he has in the show that he has in the book. And it's done so wonderfully where, he rides the bike to his house. He's walking around the house. He gets hit in the head with the shovel by the little black kid.
Oh yeah.
The interaction between him and Morgan. And if you didn't know, yes, Morgan is an OG Walking Dead character because
that's right. Yeah,
Morgan is episode 1 OG.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, but I mean, you don't see him.
But he is a little bit different in the book because in the show, he is, he holds the gun right to his head and he's like, "Are you bitten?" He's a little bit more intense in the show, which I do appreciate the intensity in the show.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and I know you don't really see him, like you see him a little bit in the beginning, but like then it's like you don't see him again for a while.
Yeah, you don't see him again for a while, but like riding the horse into Atlanta, the whole thing was done so great. Like you can go from that to the book. And what I did like too is after the pilot episode came out, they made a black and white version of the pilot episode. Yeah, I
didn't realize they made up. Is it on right now?
I don't know where you can find a black and white version, but I remember them doing a black and white version.
Huh.
And it was really cool. Like you can see the black and white version. It kind of brought it back to like the classic like horror.
Yeah.
The zombie movies. Like it just was really cool. Like that set the tone, I think, for the whole show. Even though I do think, yes, like somewhere after like 5, season 5, season 6, is really where the show started like kind of shifting, and you can kind of see that downhill slope after that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was telling Matt actually beforehand. Like I've watched. The problem was I never actually watched all the way through. I watched up until a certain point, then I was like, all right. This is just too much. I watched all 11 seasons.
Oosh. And I watched, unfortunately, I watched the whole Fear the Walking Dead. I forced myself to watch the whole thing.
Was it really that bad?
Honestly, it was good to start, and then it just was like it got worse and worse and worse.
So kind of like the whole Walking Dead thing, where it just took a toll. Yeah.
Some of the, At World's End, I think, is one of the other shows. Daryl Dixon actually was pretty good. I actually didn't mind that one. The problem is, and we'll discuss this in another one, but you can't watch any of the other ones, like unless you pay for it. So like you really can't. It's not available anywhere unless like you have cable or like,
unless you have the AMC app and you want a subscription.
You pay for like AMC Plus, or you pay $1.99 for the season. For each episode on Apple Plus. But
who the hell wants to pay for all that shit?
I'm not paying for Walking Dead. I can tell you that right now.
Definitely not.
So the pilot was a smash hit. It drew 5.35 million viewers.
Oh,
for the first episode. I mean, you're talking 2010, so that's pretty good.
Well, yeah, versus like the Acolyte.
Well,
let me get started on that one. He's like, never gonna remember. Right, we're gonna stop talking there. No, but you're right. I mean, you're talking about time frame. You're talking about 2010, and then you're talking about nowadays. Everyone's like, oh, well, 5 is not a lot. Well, for what it was at that time, it was a lot. And I mean, and granted, the show just like we said before, it was getting bigger. It was like more people were going to watch it. Now, granted, streaming wasn't a real thing by that time. If you think about it, really, it was cable.
In 2010, cable. it was cable. People DVR'd things,
or you might have had Netflix.
DVR. What the hell is that?
Well, yes, DVR. You might have had Netflix, but they weren't showing it on Netflix.
Hey, can you set the TiVo?
Hey, TiVo. We're like, what the fuck is that? You're like, well, there you go.
What the fuck is a TiVo?
Yeah, well, you younger generation here.
Hey, what is a TiVo?
What's a TiVo?
What's a TiVo?
Hey, what the hell does a DVR mean? You're like, what is this? Anyway.
So I'm going all the way down to how each medium evokes the emotions differently because, for the large part, like the Walking Dead comics were really uncensored. You know what I mean? They were gritty. I mean, when you're reading them, they use the word fucking and shit, and like they swear.
Did I not just read an excerpt for 3 of those panels, and he just said, fucking take my heart out?
And I mean, there's a scene in there where, I mean, obviously they're not showing like, boobs or anything like that, but like there's a scene where Shane is having sex with Lori in there.
Oh, lovely. I
You
didn't
know,
realize
and
that. Yeah.
you know, it's in the book.
Oh, good.
And even though you see it in the show,
Right.
I mean, the show is a lot more censored where they're not swearing.
No, and they're not showing as.
But the show is a lot more censored than, what the books were able to show, even though what the show is able to show as far as the gore level, as far as the zombies, I think far outweigh what they could show in the books. Because you can do one thing, like you draw a picture of a zombie with an arm hanging off, and in the show you can actually have that arm like ripping, and you see like the little tendons and everything coming off of it. Like that's a whole different experience.
So here's a prime example. Now I'm thinking about it too, right? So you're looking at AMC, right? Because it was basically known for like kind of like the family friendly kind of shows in that sense. And then you're like, I'm only going to bring this up, right? So because I mentioned Game of Thrones, HBO was also, again, it's more of like your darker humor. Like it can be, it'll show a lot more than most, the other subscriptions, right? So HBO is like, that's why when you look at Game of Thrones, yes, there's a lot of nudity. There's a lot of gore shit. There's a lot of all this other stuff. AMC wasn't known for that at the time because they were really more focusing on like the family friendly kind of shows and all this. And then when they did this and they're showing, like the zombies and the guts and certain other pieces. And, they weren't like, they were kind of testing the waters a little bit because you didn't know if they were going to like it or not. And now people were like, oh yeah, we love this shit. And so like you saw like certain things, but you didn't see like how
season,
HBO does
each season, I think elevated like what they were able to do and what they wanted to do. And, they got obviously much better with it. Like you watch the first season and, there are questionable things when you're watching.
Oh yeah.
When you're watching like that first season, like, like where they put CGI in and you're like, they probably could have done that practically and it would have worked, and I think in the future, future seasons like 3 and 4 and 5, like they're doing
a lot more practical.
They're doing stuff practically, and it's like that really looks amazing,
right? And they didn't have to use CGI or as not as much. Let me put it that way.
So I think each medium like evokes that emotion differently, but I don't think that there's one over the other. I just think like the books, you have to use your imagination a little bit more. Because you do have to, like, as you go through the panels, like, you have to visualize the story in your brain.
Well, yes.
And when you're watching the show, like, you don't have to do that because it's being played out for you and you can actually see it being played out.
Yeah, and I mean, so that's where, like I said, your creative mind is different from mine because, like, for me, yes, I would rather watch something visually so I could see what is the emotion and, like, that's why I hate texting. Sorry. I hate it because I don't like the fact that I can't see what is going on, right? So like it's kind of that same concept where when you're reading a book or even like looking at just a still image of something, yes, you're right. You have to kind of be more creative. You have to kind of like, okay, is this what Daryl's talking about versus not or whatever, right? Because like for me, I'm not saying that I don't have that imagination, Matt. No, it's just more, it's hard for me to be like, okay, let me read something and then just be like, oh, this is what they're talking about. No, like I said, I'm now don't get me wrong. Maybe I should read this at some point, but I just know that for me, it's harder to get that same intensity. Like, because what I think could be what they're doing could be totally different, and that's why when you look at the show, versus this, there's big differences in seeing like when I was just reading that little expert, like I know in the show Shane, yes, he gets pissed. He goes beyond pissed. Like, you can see it right there. And I mean, even the words say a lot, but like, I don't know if he's like, like yelling off the top of his head, like just like almost about to blow a gasket, or if he's like, angry, but not overdoing it. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's hard to know that piece unless you're watching, like I said, the show in that sense. But,
So, I mean, when we're talking about pacing, the comic book moves fast, and the first 12 issues of the book, it's Rick waking up, he joins the Atlanta camp, and then they end up at Herschel's farm. In the show, that's 2 seasons.
That is true.
So, it's kind of, you have to, one of the questions is like, was the slower pace a good choice or did it drag?
It depends on how you view it, right? Because the first few seasons, I mean, yes, like we were just talking about, well, like
I
Shane.
think at times it dragged.
I think it did, and you're right, because then we were just like, okay, what the fuck are they doing today? Or like, what's going to be the driving point for each episode now? Like, what is that thing that's going to move?
You know, one thing that they can do in the book that they can't do on TV is they can move faster.
True.
If you move too fast on TV, then you run the risk of people not understanding, you know, backstory, and you really can't develop like the characters like you really want to.
So I think in the first season, I think that's kind of what they were trying to do, was give you that backstory on like what is going on, let's say with Rick, you know, and his family and Shane and all that, kind of give you that portion. And then really the second was like building up the, you know, the pieces for Shane, and then like moving to Herschel's farm and stuff. So it was like trying to figure out, like, you're right. Cause I mean, granted, the show could have been a hell of a lot longer, and it could have dragged for seasons, but even longer than that. But
yeah, and I think, you know, obviously 6, you know, somewhere around 6 or 7, obviously is where it started to decline. But like, I think once Andrew Lincoln left, to me is where the show started really, like, it really lost interest to me. Like, Andrew Lincoln left, then the plot lines just were starting to get really long and recycled. The thing with Negan, you know, he was really great when he first came out, and you were like, wow, this guy's really intimidating and really like just evil, and I love him. You know, it was just really like,
I'm going to say it.
I hate him, but I love him at the same time.
I'm going to say one thing real quick. The one thing that pissed me off, I know we're going to talk about it later. Sorry, if you haven't seen the show, sorry, too late. You might as well just stop what you're doing and go watch it now. When he fucking kills Glenn right in front of everybody, I was pissed.
Well, he does it in the book, so you really
but I
can't
was
be
like,
pissed about it.
I was like, God damn it! I'm like, you piece of shit.
Read a book. He does it in the book.
I'm just saying,
You know?
it pissed me off.
But like the thing with Negan though is like, you know, they kind of bring him into this like weird semi-redemption arc, but like he never fully gets to that point. Like, he spends most of like the time either in a jail cell, and then he goes from that jail cell to another jail cell, and then he ends up like with the Whisperers doing God knows what. But like, I was personally hoping like Negan would have taken over like that Rick role.
Yeah.
Rick roll, you know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But like, I was hoping that they would do more of that redemption type arc with Negan, where he would pick up like Rick's mantle, going from like that villain that we hate to, you know, somebody who is changed and humble and capable of being like that badass leader that Rick was.
True. I mean, he was probably the closest thing you can get to, I guess, being Rick at that point.
And he never got there. Like, he never actually got there. Like, and that's personally what I was thinking of, you know, hoping for. But like, he never really got there. But like, you know, it was like, you got Rick, you got Glenn, and then Michonne, and then Carl.
I mean, Michonne was her own badass in her own right. But
like, all these people left, and it was like the show just got less interesting, less exciting. You know, they did the same plot lines over and over, and it was like,
well, that's why I was saying, like, you get to a point where you're like, is it worth me watching? And that was where I stopped. I think it was right after really Negan showed up. I should have just kept watching it. I think I watched it for a little bit, and then it was just kind of like, I think I was just so mad. I didn't really want to continue watching it for a bit. It was kind of like rage quitting. I was rage quitting on The Walking Dead, and that's kind of what it was. And I agree with you. Like, you know, the show kind of felt like you said, the recycledness, like just, you know, using the same shit over and over and over and over again. And then you're like, okay, listen, there's got to be another damn plot line that you can have here that makes sense,
right,
without having to use this. Like, oh, okay, we got this group. Oh, hey, look, we got this group. Oh, hey, we got this group. Okay, well, how many fucking groups are there, and how many times do we got to keep doing this?
It's one of those things like they, you know, once Rick left, they were really doing this whole like, you know, CRM army thing with like Fear. They did it in Fear the Walking Dead. They created a whole show to try to do it, and now they have, you know, Rick and Michonne's like, you know, show that I honestly haven't watched.
I haven't,
because I can't watch it because I'm not paying for it.
Oh, that too.
But like, it, you know, it just, if you're going to remove Rick from the show, and not that, you know, they removed him, he actually wanted to be, you know, off the show. And then, I mean, I guess at some point maybe it was like, hey, I want to kind of like a drug
Explore the
addict.
rules.
He's kind of like that drug addict, like, hey, I kind of need more of that Walking Dead,
I kind of need to do something else, Morty.
Hey, hey Morty, I need.
I knew you were going to start saying that.
I need more of that Walking Dead. You know what I mean, Morty?
Yeah, come here, Morty. Anyways, let's not go down there, Rob.
Anyways, but I don't know. I guess I would ask you kind of, I guess, this final question. Like, if you could choose one, either the TV show or the comic, which would you pick?
I mean, like I said, I haven't really read the comics, and it is a tough one because, like, it almost seems like I want to give it to the comic because, I'm not, because you know what I mean. Like, it goes quicker. There's differences in, like, the storytelling and everything else that it does, but, like, it seems like the show, it was like when we just talked about, because we're just shitting on it, of course, it just got to a point where it just kept doing the same thing, over and over and over again, where I feel like this kind of would probably give me more of like okay, well, now we're doing this, and now we're doing this, and now we're doing, you know what I mean? And it gives you more of like, okay, we're not just using the same old shit over and over and over again. Like it kind of elaborates more on, other stories, or at least other people. And it, at least with like like once you said, like with Rick and Michonne, kind of leaving and doing whatever, because Carl's technically, again, alive, and he, becomes the leader in a sense. Like you could follow him and maybe another group that you could have done whatever, but you can't do that now in the show because, of course, they're just all fucking leave and dissolve. So it kind of makes, I feel like, in my opinion, I feel like the comics might have.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the show still had like Maggie, and it still had like, it still had Daryl, and it still had like Carol, and it still had like a lot of other
same old shit,
other characters. But yeah, I mean, granted, I'll still give it to Walking Dead. Like, the world is still the same. Like, as far as like the world building and the origins and all that, like it's still a very, very unique thing. Like, and it's still very like, there's nothing else written or done on TV that is exactly like Walking Dead.
I agree.
You can watch, Z Nation, or you can watch any other zombie show that is on TV or has been on TV, but nothing will compare to Walking Dead. Even the spinoffs, like, will not. I mean, their very early seasons of Fear the Walking Dead were great, but they don't compare to like the original like show Walking Dead. Like,
oh no, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
like, it's taking the hype. It's like, when Star Trek originally came out, right? It's like, oh my God, you see Shatner, you do all this, and then like you start, hey, we're gonna do this now, you get to the point where like, where does the hype stop? Like, where do you want to have sequels? Do you want to have like these things that kind of like, let's tell them more of a story from this point of view? You're right. I would say The Walking Dead.
I think that, honestly, I think it just became, people were just, it's the same thing. You could say the same thing right now with like Marvel, where it's franchise fatigue.
Well, you're right. That's what I mean.
People are just like tired, and it's like, you guys just need to stop.
Well,
for a minute, just
take a break.
Just take a break. Just stop. And maybe like, not do, a show like a stupid spinoff. Like, don't do anything involving Rick or Daryl or anybody in this group, and just do a new story, not having to do with anybody in this group. Like, do something.
Well, I mean, the Fear of the Walking Dead, besides, because I know Morgan shows up in that technically, but
then it took a whole different direction, and like, this is where our third week of this will explore this whole thing. But like, that show, as soon as it started diving into like, there was a nuclear sub and there's a bomb on it, and it goes off, and now we're in a nuclear holocaust. What are we doing here? And there's people walking around like with like, cloth things over their faces, thinking like they're walking, a nuclear bomb just went off, and there's radiation, John. Radiation. And they're walking around with like hoodies and t-shirts over their faces. Like, you are not going to be okay walking around in a radioactive wasteland.
What, you didn't know? I thought you knew, Matt, that you could just walk around in your fucking bare naked clothes here and just, okay, doo-doo-doo, and just walk right into some radiation and turn into the Hulk at this point.
You know, it's like a few episodes later and they're like, oh, I think I'm getting like sick or something. No shit, Sherlock. You're fucking walking around in like radioactive wasteland with a shirt on your head.
Well,
no kidding.
It sounds like logic just went through the door for them. And it was just like, we could do whatever we want. We're in a TV show. I mean, yes, you are right. I guess you could do whatever you want. But realistically,
that's where it just really got stupid and was like, just make better decisions. Like, just make a good show without having to do this like stupid. I mean, I think they just ran out of ideas and they're like, you know what? We should just bomb the shit out of it and see how they react.
And see, this is where, you know, there's a lot of good TV shows where, you know, either they get, and you and I have both noticed, but like, you know, they have a really great first season and then they get canceled right off the air. And you're like, no. And you're like, because you get left with a cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
But like this one, it's just like, it was great. Don't get me wrong. But then it was like towards the, you know, somewhat middle.
You have these shows and it's like, yeah, they have like really shitty ass seasons and it goes in a whole weird direction and you're like, man, this show really sucks now.
Well, and you're like, how long do you drag it for? Like, because, you know, that's the other problem is like, you know, when you have a show that, honestly, I'll say it, once you hit your like a 10 season mark, you're playing with fire because at that point you're wondering if it's still going to be good enough for many more seasons, right? There's very few shows that can go on for multiple years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Walking Dead is done because they've hit their, you know, they've already hit their finale and whatever else, but I don't think The Walking Dead as a whole could be done on TV. Like, you could do more stories.
Oh, absolutely. You can basically make a more of a universe out of it, sure.
Yeah, you could expand the universe, but I mean, I think you just have to get away with you know, as much as I love Daryl and as much as I love Glenn, you know, Rick, and as much as I love Michonne, like, you have to move away from those characters and you have to, like, maybe even any of the characters that are in any of these books, like, you just create something brand new. Maybe you have the fucking blueprint.
Right.
And this is what we're saying. Like, use the blueprint, but create something new.
Well, here's the other thing. What if, again, maybe they do a whole completely other show, but it's like after all the shit that just went on in the original Walking Dead, it's whatever aftermath happened in the end of that show, and they just start from there, you know, but they have a whole new timeline or a whole new thing going on with a whole new group or whatever. They could have done that. They could have, like,
I mean, you can do it in any other part of the world. I mean, you could do it in
Russia, for God's sake.
Friggin' New England. You can do it in Seattle. You can do it in any part of the United States or in the world.
Overseas, yeah.
Like, you can do it anywhere. Like, you know, The Walking Dead primarily took part in like Georgia, like that kind, you know, southern, that southern area. But I think like that's kind of like where, you know.
Well, yeah, because like that took it down south. Fear of the Walking Dead was really more in California.
But you have that world, and that's kind of where, you know, where this episode really, you know, is talking about. Like, you have the origin, you have the, you know, you have the world that the Walking Dead built, and now you have that blueprint, and now you can build whatever you want to do a future spinoff and not make it something like, you know, World Beyond or Tales of the Walking Dead or whatever, you know.
I know.
The stupid shit that you're making now where it's like, hey, let's keep focusing on Rick. No.
Let's not.
Fuck Rick. And move on to
Rick. No, sorry. Totally random. Move
on to somebody, like, create somebody new and make a new story. Like, do something else. Like, you started it so well with Fear the Walking Dead, and it was a good show. And why was it a good show? Because it focused on a family that wasn't about survival. It was just a normal family, and it was like, it was actually before the thing happened.
Right.
And you actually got to see, like, how the world reacted to this thing happening. And they were just normal people trying to survive. They weren't survivalists.
Well, I mean, technically, even being a cop really doesn't make you a survivalist. You know, it just means you can hold a weapon and use whatever.
No, and that's what made Rick great. And that's where at some point, like, he shifted into the badass and became the leader. And that's where, like, I think it shifted. But, like, the family, they were just a normal family. And then that's where that show shifted because somebody else took over. Right. And they changed them from being kind of this normal family to now they thought about the future and they made plans and they started, like, they took over, like, the stadium and they did this whole thing. And they made the show into something it should never have been.
No, and I think kind of like closing thoughts here, it's just more the fact that, you know, looking at The Walking Dead, right? When you just said about the follow the blueprint, you know, you're right. You have the game plan, you have all this stuff in place, you have all these things that you should be doing, but you say, hey, you know what? Like, let's say halfway through a season, we're just gonna turn that around and we're gonna say, you know, we're gonna kick it in the ass and say, fuck it, we don't care what it is at this point. But I will say, man, before we go, we need to get freaking merch that say, like, follow the blueprint or some. We gotta get this momentum going. I think that's what we got to do. We got to get some merch going, buddy.
I'm working on it.
I know, because that would be funny as hell.
Yeah,
I know. Anyways, guys.
But I did want to say, I did want to say one thing because normally we don't have this, not that we have extra time, but I do want to say, like, week 2, which is next week, we will be talking about character evolution and adaptation from the comics to the TV show. Week 3, we're going to be talking about the expanding universe, which is all of the spin-offs and all that greatness that we just talked about.
Just talk about a little bit, yeah.
And then week 4 is like the legacy and impact of The Walking Dead. So
I know we already talked about that a little bit, but yeah.
We talked about it a little bit, but we'll talk more about it and, be able to discuss, like, what the franchise got right and what went wrong and critiques of the later seasons and, kind of get more into detail. But that's kind of what the future, the next 3 weeks bring.
But yes, now that we heard all that, man, I appreciate you saying that. Yes. Anyways, why don't you hit us up with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more geeky discussions. And again, until next time,
Stay geeky.